Welcome to Yahoo Finance's Morning Brief. I'm Julie Hyman, and boy, is it an exciting day. Yes, it is SpaceX Day for those of you who observe, and let's face it, everybody observes. Parag Subramanian here with me on set, and Zach Guzman, a Yahoo Finance alum and founder of Trustless Media. It's great to have you back on set with us.
Great to be back. Feels
Thanks
good.
For being here. Good. It feels good, and you're here, obviously, on the day of days, I think we can say. So for those of you who are watching at home who don't know at this point, SpaceX, biggest IPO ever, 555,555,555 shares being sold at $135 each, raising $75 billion for a total valuation of $1.77 trillion. People are pumped about this IPO. Some people are skeptical about this IPO, but the enthusiasm is palpable out there. Pras, you've been covering this thing. Like, what does it feel like that we're finally at the day when it's happening?
I mean, it's just been this long sort of, not really slow drip, but just been a buildup up to this day. Finally, we're here. We hear about the SpaceX IPO for years now, right? And finally it's happening. Musk, I guess, sort of has his ducks in a row, right, with regards to he's solved his Tesla issues with compensation and things like that, and that's sort of tying into what we're seeing here, where he's saying, you know what, I'm going to be in full control of the dual class nature of the stock. He's not going to mess around with the single class here.
Yes.
And basically, once this thing opens and trades, he's going to be doing quite well. But so will a lot of people. Not just the workers at Starbase, but also many of the biggest funds, VC funds in Silicon Valley are going to be making tons of money. I think it's going to be A16's biggest win ever, which we can talk about in a little bit. But yeah, for me, it's just the culmination of this whole sort of process that we're finally seeing coming through here. Where's it going to open, right? That's the big question. Is it going to be just a nice 20% pop, or is it going to be a nuclear type of launch to see there? And then we're going to be going crazy. And we're already seeing the retail investors go crazy. The banks are kind of already clamoring to see what's going to happen here. So we'll see. The question is, when will they start trading, right?
That is the question. Bloomberg is reporting that we could see it start to open for quotation around 9:50, 10 o'clock, but I don't know if that means when it will actually open. Mm-hmm. There you see the live shot of the Nasdaq. And, they usually put up on the full screen. What's not pictured in this, by the way, is the big Elon Musk torso blow up that activists put up in Times Square.
Is it looking like the rat, like the normal rat blow up?
I think it's bigger than the rat.
It's like a bust. It's like a bust.
It is bust, yes.
It's a staple.
Truly, it's truly a bust.
Yeah. So Zach, you are now more steeped in the crypto world than in the public equity world.
Yes.
But I'm curious, there's definitely a Venn diagram where there is intersection between those.
Yeah.
What's the chatter? What's the vibe there?
There's a huge overlap, I think, honestly, because one of the most exciting things that we've watched in crypto land this year is kind of crypto colliding with traditional finance. And specifically in the pre-IPO market, it's been all the rage. Hyperliquid being the big platform that even Coinbase has now been throwing their money into. And we've been watching because for the last few IPOs, actually, price action has pretty much matched where things eventually start trading when the real IPO happens. So there is speculation. Markets certainly are it's not very deep liquidity that we're seeing on platforms like Hyperliquid. But it is interesting to think about some of the pricing dynamics that you were talking about. Will we have a big day one pop? We'll see. But I think some of them have matched surprisingly well, at least in capturing what I think, which we can get into, what everyone fears, which is botched IPOs like Facebook and Figma and all these other ones where you have a huge day one pop and you leave so much money on the table. Mm-hmm. Or that you see a bunch of retail traders maybe get burned in some of these trades as well.
Yeah, well, that's the big fear. And that's why a lot of retail traders have said they don't want to get into this because they feel like, the big guys who have been in it for a while, they're going to exit and then leave them with losses, at least early on. Yeah. By the way, you mentioned Hyperliquid. The last I saw, the shares were there around 180. I haven't checked it lately.
Like a 30%
that's what Bloomberg was reporting this morning.
It's like a 30% pop, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Bring it up right now.
And the volume there has been, I think, higher than usual. So to your point, a couple of things to mention about the IPO. The fact that the price was 135 and not indicated for a range was unusual, right?
It was.
And so there has been some debate about, does that take out the price discovery element of it in the IPO process? Mm-hmm. And let's distinguish the IPO process, where people get an allocation of shares and the first day of trading when price discovery happens once it hits the public market. So, and I think that's a healthy debate to have. Like, was this is there something taken away by not allowing that process to happen?
I think it takes away a lot, and I guess we'll see. We'll see if we eat our words on this. Who knows? Everything could be a slam dunk success here. But I think just in terms of at least what markets are supposed to be about, providing kind of the most fair way to go about this and providing access for retail traders. I loved working at Yahoo Finance because I always feel like we're on the side of retail traders mostly. But it does seem like it does remove at least fair price discovery, transparency from a little bit of this. And we can also talk about, by the way, maybe I've been out of the game too long, but seeing Fidelity and some of these retail brokerages kind of threaten bans on like IPO allocations for retail traders who dump shares within a certain amount of time. That to me, I don't know. Has that always been the case?
It rubs me the wrong way. I know it hasn't always been it has been the case for other issuances, but it rubbed me the wrong way seeing that, right? Because you're not only going to say you're not going to get in on the good price, you're going to get in later, and then when you get in, you can't get out unless we're going to penalize you, right? I had a quick question to Zach though, but do you think people are selling crypto to get into SpaceX?
I think that was not real at all. And we heard that from a lot of people. I know by the way, your interviews with Michael Saylor have been phenomenal, and I've enjoyed watching those all the time. And seeing him kind of try and push that idea that everyone's just dumping crypto because they want to get into SpaceX. I think that's totally false.
I think there was some crypto selling to get into AI.
That is true.
Generally, to sort of just like follow the next momentum thing.
Yeah.
Maybe at the margin for SpaceX, but I don't know that there was any. I mean, it had already sold off.
Yes. I mean, to your point, I did look, by the way, on Hyperliquid, and you are right. Volumes are up like 10x, and the pricing there is 173 a share, which has come down.
Which is interesting. Okay, so we did a poll actually on Twitter on X, excuse me. Old habits die hard. To see where people thought it would open, and the majority, the biggest votes went to above 200, but not above 300. So there's our poll though. There, people, the minority said it'll stay around 135. Around 150 was called that 19%. Above 200 was like 27%, and then some people thought it would go above 300.
So just back of the math, that Hyperliquid, that what do you say, 178?
173?
73?
173 right now.
Is a 28% pop.
So not as big as some of the other indications.
Right, but that's a pretty good, 20 to 30% is like not bad. It's like you valued it pretty good.
It's not crazy.
To get back on that valuation thing about where the price is right. On the flip side of the discussion is Musk was supposedly the one that came up with that number. And it's like, this guy knows he's like, I know what this company's worth. This is what I think it's worth. And people sort of fall in line with that, and people sort of, maybe they agree with that, right? There's it's a big bet, 100x revenue, right?
Yeah.
Pre the compute deals. The argument is that he actually knows what's going on. He's the guy who knows how to raise a lot of money, and that's what the stock is worth, and that's what where it'll be around.
Well, because you could also argue his genius is not necessarily in innovation, although fine, you can argue that.
Marketing, right?
His genius is marketing.
Yeah.
So his genius is storytelling, his genius is narrative. I mean, more than one person has said that to me this week, that he's selling the narrative. In fact, Chad Anderson, I think, is the one who said that to me, who's an early SpaceX investor. He said, people are buying the narrative. I said, at some point, though, the narrative has to be true. And so that sort of is the other thing, is that there are a lot of people who say, no, thank you, I'm going to wait, see what this thing does, both what the stock does, and if the company can fulfill all of the promises.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously with space, right? And Pross, you know this better than anybody probably. Like, the idea of what they are selling here is the narrative, I would agree, but it's a narrative around something that no one really understands and everyone can imagine.
Yeah.
Like, the final frontier is literally, you just throw anything out there and it sounds reasonable. Because we've seen science fiction before. And so I do think that is what he's selling here, is kind of like, hey, it could be worth anything. That's almost why with this IPO, it's kind of a moot point to dig into the financials, because we could say, sure, on the margin, hey, these losses are stacking up, but does it matter if you become the company that captures space?
Well, but the other thing is, the thing that I was talking about this morning in our meeting is, how many people out there do you think know that SpaceX is not a majority space company? In other words, like the biggest part of the huge TAM that they came out with in the S1 is not about space per se. It's about AI.
You're right.
It's about the XAI business. It's about data centers. It's about Grok, which is sort of an also-ran when it comes to the LLMs. And I don't know that people fully understand that. They think that this is a rocket company, and maybe they know about Starlink.
Starlink, yeah, right. But they don't understand so much of it is an investment of cash burn from the AI business, right? And then that's why Musk had, just last week, here's our new AI satellite. Here's how it works. It's actually simpler than a Starlink satellite. We're like, okay, but yeah, that is a big part of that vision. Also, is what's not necessarily well known amongst the retail investment community.
Yeah, I mean, people who are buying it might probably know, but I just more mean like
and it's
people in general culture.
Yeah, I mean, there was a note out from Oppenheimer about they value SpaceX like 190 a share, outperform rating, et cetera. But their whole thing is that this is a big data center play, right? If it's all about data centers in space, they can do it, they can launch it. It's going to take a lot of launches, it's going to take a lot of working it out, but that's their big bet, right? And then the backup is, if they can't do that, they have a lot going on terrestrial, right? They have Colossus 1 and 2. They've shown they can build these things. So that's like the hedge, is that they don't necessarily have to go to space, they can do it out here.
Sure, but the hyperscalers that are actually in that business, they're not valued like that, and they actually make money.
I'm just saying that's what they said.
Right? Like I know. I'm not, guys. I want to move on just quickly because you mentioned this earlier. Like all of the early investors that are going to be making huge money on this, even if they can't sell right away. Right? You've got Founders Fund that bought 3% for $600 million. Now that stake is worth $50 billion. Pretty good return here. Andreessen Horowitz, according to Bloomberg, it's I think about a $10 billion stake, and they got the biggest return on anything in their history. Sequoia has about 1.5%. So all of these funds that got in early and started adding. Then there's the one guy at 137 Ventures, Justin Fisher Wolfson, who just chipped away at it and now owns about 1% of the company. Like all these people that are just, and then there's the employees that you mentioned also, Cross, who are making a lot of money.
All of these people, for sure, I think, are celebrating today.
Yes.
I think we can also talk about some of the rules that are changing around this listing, too, when it comes to passive funds. We had Mike Green on the show on Coinage not too long ago, kind of talking about his fears.
Right?
Yes, and he's been talking about that for a very long time, about passive funds are running into issues. And with this one and the rule changes, I don't know if you guys feel the same way about that, too. But basically, yes, these people are certainly doing great. But what's going to happen when all of these indexes have changed their rules, so now SpaceX becomes forcibly in there, and you have passive investors who might not want to be allocated to this at the prices we're going to see. And then what happens to that?
Well, the defense is they're only selling 5% of float, so the weighting will not be heavy at first. But eventually, as those early investors start selling their shares, the float will grow and the weighting will grow. I have to say I agree. I think that Dow S&P made the right call
by holding off
to not put it in right away. And I think but I understand the push-pull because of the size of this and because of the interest in it. But if people are interested in it, they could just buy it. Eventually, I mean, even if it's not right away, they can buy it. In 15 days when it's going to go, or 14 days, whatever it is, when it goes in the Nasdaq anyway. People will be able to buy it.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point on S&P and Dow Jones actually being kind of a bit sober here on that, saying, hey, we have rules in place for a reason. We're the benchmark index in the U.S., perhaps the globe. Let's just be careful with this stock with only 4.2% float or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
But also you talk about, there's going to be phases here where a lot of shares are going to be unlocked, right? I believe there's a clause that if they hit certain Q2 earnings stuff, revenue metrics, it'll unlock the ability for insiders to sell more. And then the first tranche of insider selling is I think it's 6 months after the IPO. And the big one is a year when Musk can start unloading his stuff if he wants to. I think that's when you're going to see massive amount of liquidity come in, and then that's a potentially downdraft for the stock, right?
We'll that's the piece that I don't know, and I'd love to hear what you guys think as I've stepped away from covering IPOs every single day. But the idea of kind of what this will look like, I was having massive flashbacks to Facebook in that IPO, and not to date myself, but I was on campus right next to where Mark started the company, watching that play out. And in 2012,
if anyone who knows Zach, he tends to drop in casual conversation where he went to school. And that school was Harvard.
Well, it's relatable this time around. It's a Facebook IPO.
It's relevant.
It's relevant.
Sure.
Totally natural segue.
It's a natural segue to get into Facebook. But then on that day, as you guys remember, it was kind of one of those situations where I think similar to what you just said is like people didn't really appreciate what Facebook would be. They looked at it as an advertising company and didn't understand what it could grow into. But that was a terrible IPO. I think we'd all agree that was worse. You could have waited and had plenty of entry points where you would have saved yourself a 60% decline.
I mean, Tesla, by the way, is kind of the same way itself, right? That, it kind of bumped along for years and didn't do anything. So you had ample opportunity to get in, but it wasn't as hyped as this one.
Yeah.
But you're right. And then it just went nuclear, right? In the back half
eventually it did. I mean, it's been volatile since then, but yes, eventually it did take off. So when this starts trading today, Musk is pretty much guaranteed to become a trillionaire, right? Even at 135, he's a trillionaire because his SpaceX stake is worth $690 billion at that 135. Tesla, his net worth there is about $279 billion. So, looks like he's probably going to make it if the stock gains at all. And going back to the torso, the blow up outside outside the Nasdaq and there in Times Square. I mean, obviously his growth in profile and wealth has come with some criticism, right? That activists have pushed back against him as a rich person, but also his government involvement last year didn't help matters.
Right. I mean, if you look at the numbers, he's made a tremendous amount of money since Trump was elected, right? That whole bet has paid off big time for him. But yeah, you have the connection with the White House and the administration, but also just a lot of things he's posting on X which is a story in itself, is the fact that he's putting a lot of stuff out there that's pretty controversial and offensive to some people, and it doesn't seem to matter. It doesn't seem to be, he's not being punished like a normal CEO would have been punished, right? Like lost his job, company shares going down. It doesn't seem to matter when it comes to SpaceX. Like that's all forgiven, all forgotten.
Not even just SpaceX. It seems that the rules, normal rules in general, do not apply to him. I mean, and that goes back to the fact that he has 85% voting share in SpaceX as well.
Right.
It goes back to the fact that he put it at 135 and he's just like, I declare.
Yeah.
It goes back to the fact that all the brokerages are restricting people from retail investors, that this is the price of admission, that they're not allowed to sell their shares for a while. Like, to me, that all comes back to the power of Elon Musk.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't too long ago when you think about kind of when Tesla shares were under pressure back when he was still kind of doing the Doge things. And that was, I guess, a little bit different because there was a way, obviously with Tesla, more people buy cars than spaceships. So I think there was a way for the average consumer to maybe fight back, or maybe we saw the stickers of like, I bought this Tesla before Elon was Elon.
Right.
And so like there is a little bit of a difference, I think, with this one specifically just because of it being more of a B2B than a B2C play. But I think, a lot of people thought that was a terrible move back then. And now, I guess, this is one of those clear cases of someone in this camp, a very rich man, makes the bet, and now it's playing out, and to your point, Julie, getting to change all the rules, and I don't know how many of those rules would be able to be changed if he didn't kind of align himself a few years ago.
Just want to mention that's Adina Friedman, who is CEO of NASDAQ, who's speaking there. Them getting this listing was a real feather in the cap of the NASDAQ, but as we have alluded to multiple times, the pressure is now on to make it go right and not have Facebook was a long time ago now.
It was.
One would think that they have
fixed those glitches. Because many people don't remember they did that right at the campus in Menlo Park. Like that's where they rang the proverbial bell.
Yeah.
And so it was an awkward day because they're all standing around. And they're like, hey, there's some technical glitches here, and that was kind of a tough look. So yes, it's been a long time. Presumably they've gotten those ironed out.
Yeah,
but a lot of pressure.
Ironed out. Yes, definitely a lot of pressure.
I mean, I think if we get traded by 1 o'clock or so, we'll be fine. But any later in the day, it gets kind of worrisome, right? What's going to happen when it opens? It's going to open like 3:30.
No, I think they're going to make it happen as early as they possibly can. By the way, something else to mention: even after it opens, you could have halts for volatility, right? If it swings by 10% or more, that's just the rules of the exchanges. Is that you get a temporary halt when that happens.
And we've seen some other kind of sourcing. Nasdaq says they're not the ones that open the stock. It's the primary market maker that opens the stock. So
That's right.
it's not in our hands to open the stock.
Right. It's when they decide, are there enough buyers and sellers on either side? Have they come to the price that makes sense? Also, there's something called the green shoe option, right?
Yeah.
The Wall Street Journal had a good explainer on it this morning. I've heard it many times. I'm not sure I ever entirely understood the whole process. So basically, the underwriters sell more shares than the offer size so that they can then come in and buy those shares to help support the price if necessary. So that's so that's something also that can give a little support for that kind of situation. There's Gwen Shotwell of SpaceX, who just got introduced as well. She ran up. I don't know if you guys saw the video. She was very excited, of course, as you might imagine, here today. So the way it works is the bell will ring, then we'll wait for sort of opening indications. At least that's how it usually happens. You get some reporting on, like, this is the range, this is where they're talking about. You get a drum beat. But I don't know if that'll happen that way this time around, right? Something else, like I mentioned before, we had our poll about where the stock could open. I also did a separate poll this morning just for fun. I've been having fun with this on
Big
X.
polling feature.
Big polling. I asked, when will the SpaceX shares fall below 135?
That is a good question.
Some people, I thought the first thing was going to be zero. I thought nobody would say it would happen today, but a bunch of people, like about a fifth, said it could happen today. I don't think there's any chance the underwriters would allow it to fall under 135 today, but who knows? The majority said within 90 days. Some people said within a year, and then of course there was a pretty strong contingent who said never.
Yeah.
Or the people who are the real
Tesla fanboys.
believers. They're the people who are trying to get those allocations. What do you guys think?
I'm in the 50% camp there, the one that
You think within
option
90
B.
days?
I think it will test that, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Especially when you have more, when you unlock more.
Yeah. What do you think, Zach?
I think, honestly, I'd put me in the today camp. I don't know if that's a hot take or not.
Wow,
because
that is a hot take. I don't think that'll happen.
Well, I just think, we don't have, to your point, we don't have any of the things that we normally get to enjoy, which is, hey, how close were we?
Right.
How has the range changed?
Right, what was the range before?
We're going off the reporting of just, 5 times over.
Got this guy back in the building?
Yeah, Brian Stassi rolling in here.
No gray hair yet, man. That's awesome.
He's going to take it to the opening bell here. Okay, so I'll ask you this question.
Yep.
When do you think the stock will test 135 and go below?
Do I have to give that prediction? You never give predictions. Why do I have to give a prediction?
I've changed my tune. I'm starting to get
It's not going to go below 135. I think it's going to just keep going up.
Ever?
Well, I don't know. Ever, Julie. I got to see that first earnings report. Hey, real quick, you were showing Adina Friedman.
Friedman? Yeah.
Friedman. Fun fact, she is a black belt in Taekwondo and a licensed pilot. Badass, Adina Friedman. Big day for you, Adina. Crushing it.
I didn't know any of those
She could
things.
really, honestly, probably beat my ass right now. If I said anything bad about SpaceX, she could probably take me down. And
I don't know.
Out.
You just did that High Rocks race, so.
No, Adina's badass.
Okay,
She'll kill me.
if you say so. Yep. I don't know. What about Elon? You think he could?
No, definitely not.
No, definitely not.
Definitely not. You see those man boobs on him out in Times Square?
I did. That was definitely one of the primary
Sorry,
characteristics of the blow up thing.
I just wanted to hear you.
He's got to train with Sazi. He must got to train with Sazi. I think that's.
I'm open to it.
Right?
2 trillionaires training together.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he had that whole fight that was maybe going to happen with Zuck, and then of course.
Are you happy this is almost
never
done?
played out.
I
it's not done. It's
your
not
hair.
done.
Your hair was actually all dark.
I
no gray
know,
before we started
dude.
covering
I know.
SpaceX.
I'm ready for this to be over and stock trading. Everyone gets their whatever.
Well, I've enjoyed your work, man. Good stuff.
It's never going to be over.
It's never over.
Now it's going to be a public company, and we're going to have to talk about it all the time.
Every day.
Well, guys, this has been fun. Saz is going to take it and
I'm pumped. I'm ready to go.
and beat the drum.
Yeah, I'm ready to
when
go.
it actually starts trading. Zach, lovely to
Thank
see
you
you.
for having
again.
me back.
Thank you so
It was
much
good
for
to see you
coming
guys.
in. This
Grab
was
some
fun.
bagels. Free bagels.
I will.
Ross, we'll all be talking again throughout the day as we wait for the stock to open up on SpaceX Day. That does it for Morning Brief. This guy is next.
Get ready to blast off.
He's ready.
You can smell the Celsius.
Yeah.
The children, the brothers, the sisters, the parents that have lived through long nights and have seen launch failures, that have seen that have seen trials.
All right, SpaceX IPO day for the markets, better known as the largest IPO in history. You're seeing Elon Musk right there talking remotely. Let's tune in. You're essentially watching history play out right now in Texas and down at the Nasdaq in Times Square. You're watching it play out right here on Yahoo Finance. Elon Musk reading that bill out there at SpaceX, I believe HQ is that, guys? Nonetheless, that is Elon right there. Yeah, there we go. And then we got the Nasdaq crew holding it down at all things SpaceX in Times Square. May Musk, I believe, Elon's mom there at the Nasdaq, holding it down too as well. Gwen Shotwell, key employee there at SpaceX, really an OG over there at SpaceX. It is going to be a wild day. See all the employees, so many employees at SpaceX. Really, their lives will change forever once that stock officially opens. Of course, it's going to change right now, even when it's not open, because it's going to eventually open. This company's going to become public, and a lot of those early believers in Musk, whether it's venture capitalists or the early people that signed on to work with the company, are going to be millionaires, multi-millionaires. All right, and a little later on today, I'll be talking with NASDAQ President Nelson Griggs about all things SpaceX. Griggs is the primary point person on the SpaceX IPO for the NASDAQ, having spent years rising the ranks through the exchange's listings business. Big day for Nelson and his team, of course. But SpaceX isn't expected to open for trading for some time as the market aims to digest about 555 million shares coming to market. Here's what we know about SpaceX right now. Stock priced at $135 Thursday evening, valuing the company at about $1.78 trillion. We're hearing of chatter of strong institutional demand, with BlackRock reportedly ordering $5 billion in SpaceX stocks. The IPO has led to some wild moves in space-related stocks. Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic is getting slammed today after a 22% run-up on Thursday. Rocket Labs is putting a good showing out of the gate today after a 9% pop on Thursday. Shares of some of the key underwriters on the space, have to watch this too, are in the green, namely JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs. Each could show sizable fees in the third quarter from the IPO. We will have wall-to-wall coverage of the SpaceX IPO here at Yahoo Finance all day. And I mean wall-to-wall, not just live on our network, but on the Yahoo Finance homepage, our app, Alpha Space, and our social channels. It's a big day for the retail investing community, and we got you full stop, no doubt about it. Yahoo Finance, Brooke DePalma is right in the middle of the action at the Nasdaq in Times Square. Brooke, you caught some of those Elon comments. Have you seen May at all?
I did see May in the lobby. I did not see her come out during the opening bell. May Musk, of course, that's Elon Musk's mom, certainly celebrating today. This amazing accomplishment that SpaceX is now headed towards being the largest IPO in history. It was actually something that Elon Musk seems like he couldn't even wrap his head around. In fact, he even told his workers, at the SpaceX headquarters and the NASDAQ, the employees right behind me tuning in remotely, he said that actually when someone told me this was going to happen, I said, you must be smoking crack. That's what Elon Musk had told employees during today's opening comments before that bell ringing at the NASDAQ. And I'll tell you, Brian, I have never felt an energy around an IPO like this one this morning.
Yeah, Brooke, it is quite the day. You can't help but it is a moment. I mean, it is a historic moment for investors, for markets all around the world. The largest ever IPO. You're seeing the activity right down there at the NASDAQ, Brooke. It's going to be a big day. Can't wait to see that stock open. We'll be in touch with you soon, Brooke. Appreciate it. All right, here to break it all down, we have Tom Sosnoff, Lost Dog founder and CEO, and the founder and former CEO of Tasty Trade, Keith Lerner, Truist Chief Investment Officer and Chief Market Strategist, and Nancy Tengler, Laffer Tengler Investment CEO and CIO. Good morning to you all on really what is a historic day. Tom, let me start with you. Walk me through some of the plumbing and the infrastructure here. Like, how hard is it to absorb all of these shares?
That's a pretty fair question. Well, obviously not very hard because the offering is oversubscribed and it seems like there's an incredible amount of interest. And look, it's all everybody's talking about right now. So, I mean, when you talk about absorbing it, this market's been able to absorb virtually anything. And this one seems like, I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say it was a 10, pretty easy to absorb.
Keith, I was going back to the work that you put out there in the lead up to this IPO, and I walk us through it a little bit because there's a lot of hype, of course, with all things related to SpaceX. But let's keep in mind, it's not guaranteed that the hype carries SpaceX to bigger gains for the rest of the year. That's not how historically this works.
Yeah, sure. And I would also just mention on the last question, it's 75 billion, so it's not as though $1 trillion worth of shares are coming to market right away. I think over time we'll see that those lockups add more supply, but it's manageable, at this point. And to your point around the IPOs, just as a starting point, what we did is we looked at the last 15 years, and we looked at performance of the major IPOs, probably about 30 of them. And what we found in the research is a couple things. First, I think in the near term, from the close of the first day, there's a bit of a positive skew over the next few months. But as you look at 6 to 12 months, there's actually been more of a negative skew with those IPOs only up about 40% of the time. But there's huge variation, Brian. The one thing that really stood out in our work, and I think this is really important for the viewers to understand, is that when we looked at the maximum peak to trough drawdown over the next year, the average was about 50%. So, and the lowest was 20%. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean that actually the stock's going to go up. It means at some point it hit a high and you saw a drawdown, and sometimes pretty violent. So I think investors just be aware that you have to hold on, strap in tight, because with these IPOs, especially as is discovery as they come out, the volatility is high. But again, think about something that was down at some point 20% or 50%. That's pretty big, and not something that an average stock sees during the next year.
Nancy, do you think it's because Elon is so involved here? This is another Elon Musk company. There's been a large appetite to get another piece of Elon Musk and SpaceX. Is SpaceX the one that bucks this trend, this post IPO hangover?
It could, Brian. I mean, I think the warnings are well placed. But if you go back and look, I mean, the analogy has been drawn to Meta, but our analogy is closer to Amazon, which was a company that changed the way we lived and did business, right? And so Amazon, since the IPO, is up 243,000%. And so the question becomes, and it was up quite dramatically 1 year out. So the question becomes, is this an IPO and a company that captures the imagination of investors? I think it is. For us, it certainly is. We have a thematic portfolio that is, one of the themes is space. And so, we're seeing the source of funds coming from Rocket Labs, Planet Labs, and then potentially NVIDIA. And so we're in buying some of those names, and we have our orders in for SpaceX. So our time horizon is 3 to 5 to 10 years, much more so than a year from now.
Nancy, where do you see a SpaceX 5 to 10 years from now?
Oh, well, I mean, you have to take some of the predictions with a grain of salt. So Elon's talked about a total addressable market of 28.5 trillion. Interestingly, the majority of that is coming from the current cash incinerator, which is the AI portion of the business. But if we're expecting a merger with Tesla in 2027, 2028. And so, I don't know. You could see this company's not only market cap, but revenue growth really be exponential. And I can't even quantify it at this point.
Tom, let me get you in here. As part of the prospectus on SpaceX, it was noted, and I think not a lot of folks have talked about this in a bit, but I'm going to bring it back up. Tesla now owns 19 million shares of SpaceX. Are these stocks, SpaceX and Tesla, now, because they're so intertwined through that perspective, they're likely to trade in unison?
I don't know about that. At least not right out of the chute. I think SpaceX is going to be in its own little volatile world until everybody kind of figures it out. So and especially because, Tesla's been a little bit more on its butt lately. So I would say that, and as a trader, I'm not looking at those two to kind of be attached at the hip. So I'm going to trade them. And I think most other people are going to trade them very independent of one another, at least for the next year or so.
Tom, if one is a believer in Musk and his SpaceX vision, how should they go upon trading SpaceX?
Well, there is this Elon Musk effect, and it's kind of, actually, I find it to be scary because I don't like, I have this good billionaire, bad billionaire thing, and I've got Elon in the bad billionaire camp.
Why is that?
So I don't really love, everything tied to Elon. I think there's, you are talking a little bit about a single point of failure, potentially.
Why do you have Elon in the bad billionaire camp?
Well, for starters, he created the Cybertruck.
I hate being behind those things, Tom, so I agree with you there, man.
Yeah, and the other thing is, look, I like to think of myself as somebody that has a little bit of a humanitarian view of the world, and I think 270,000 civil servants losing their job because of him being the richest person, it doesn't make me love the guy.
Fair enough. Keith, what do you think this moment means for some of the stocks that have been used as sources of funds in the lead up to the SpaceX IPO? I'm looking at the Mag 7. I'm looking at a lot of the hot AI names, Micron and SanDisk. The chatter in the market has been these stocks have been sold, so the average investor has enough money to go out and play SpaceX.
Yeah, it's interesting, Brian. I think there's other factors besides this, SpaceX. If you look at the collective Mag 7 this year, I think it would surprise people that they're actually collectively down this year. And I believe only 4 of the 7 are actually up. And what's also notable is the S&P small cap tech is up 50%. So, I think there's already been some, these companies have moved a lot over the last couple of years. They're trillion-dollar companies. And I think part of what we've seen is maybe there's some concern about more supply coming in, but there's also the question about all the CapEx spending and the debt raising, and money has actually been trickling down to other areas and the picks and shovels. So, I think there's room for both. I think, as you think about overall the market of the AI and tech is the dominant theme. And when we look back historically, that dominant theme tends to persist to the end of the bull market. So if you think the bull market's still in place, I think there's room for both. But I still think kind of what's already happened is market is seeing beyond the Mag 7 for other opportunities. And now there's this whole question about this new frontier as far as space, the space economy, which I think will start to really open up and more discussion around what that means and who are some of the other players that could benefit, maybe not even public companies today, but the public companies of tomorrow.
Keith, do you think this IPO, biggest IPO in history, this marks the end of the bull market?
No, I don't think so. I know sometimes we've had historically, where you have something come out towards a peak as far as the main sector driving the bull market. But, as we kind of talked about some things earlier, you look back at, Facebook or Meta today, and when it came out, we all know it was down, I think, 45% over 3 months. But that was in 2012. That didn't, that wasn't the peak. And when Google or Alphabet today came out, I think it was 2004, that wasn't, the end of the bull market. I do say, we've had this, off the lows before the pullback, tech had a 47% move over a short period of time. So I do think, and we've been looking for more of a pause in the tech trade, even though we're still positive because the earnings are there. But no, to answer your question directly, I don't think this marks the end of it, but obviously some excitement has come in here short term because of it.
It's in the lead up to the IPO, SpaceX IPO, guys, we hit the street. We're asking that average investor out there, the average person, what they thought about Musk and SpaceX. Take a listen.
I'd like to hear, does it make sense as an investment? What is kind of the opinion on having an individual human being as a trillionaire in America? What are the implications that it has for our society?
Nancy, what implications does this IPO have for society?
Well, listen. There was a great interview with Jeff Bezos where he said, you can hate me because I'm a billionaire, but if you go back and look at what Amazon has done for the average consumer, it's saved time, hassle, money. How do you put a price on that? So if we get data centers in space, if we see half of what's outlined in the prospectus, with the caveat that there's a definite key man risk factor, I think you can say this has a positive implication for society and for the average investor. So I don't like the political side of the whole thing. I don't really care. There's a lot of CEOs I own stock in their companies, and I don't like them as individuals, but that doesn't mean they're not really good operators of their business and visionaries. I think Elon Musk has proven he is a good operator with some time lags and a visionary. And, if you just look at the mega pack battery business in Tesla, energy storage for renewable energy, that has a profound implication for society and for the average consumer of energy. So there's a lot of things to love, a lot of things to hate. But in this particular IPO, I think you want to participate, and I think it will ultimately be good for society.
Nancy, as someone that studies a lot of financial statements, crunches a lot of numbers, what does this IPO mean for the old school defense plays, like a Lockheed Martin, a Northrop Grumman, even a Boeing, which has tried to go toe-to-toe with Elon Musk? Are those just really unattractive investments at this point?
I don't think they're unattractive. I think they have a place in certain portfolios. But, you go back to the whole DeepSeek announcement and Jevons paradox. We were in buying a lot of the names that were getting clobbered. What often happens is that a big success in a particular sector or theme will draw attention. Now, we have seen the source of funds, at least in our view, has come from Planet Labs, Rocket Labs, Kratos. We'll see if investors return to those names. And I think they will. NVIDIA as well. We actually added it to our value portfolio, believe it or not. We added Google 2 years ago to our value portfolio when it was left for dead after the BARD announcement. So there are opportunities in here for other aspects of the segment, but make no mistake, these other companies are behind. And there was a big article about why it takes Lockheed Martin so long to build a Patriot missile. So you have to hope that this will speed up implementation.
I want to take it back to the streets. We also asked folks if they thought this would be a successful IPO. Take a listen.
I would say, is it too late for me to invest now? And do you think it's actually going to be successful?
Tom, is this a successful IPO just from the standpoint that it's coming public and it looks like it might open before noon?
I mean, if you want to talk about it success-wise, I mean, it's one of the most brilliant PR moves. The amount of PR that they got from this IPO is just incredible. I mean, it's tens of billions of dollars worth of PR and marketing and everything else. So from that standpoint, I would say, yeah, it's a hugely successful. Are people that are participating that were allocated stock, are they going to be rewarded? And I think the answer is yes. And the original shareholders are going to be rewarded. So from that standpoint, I think, yeah, it's a successful IPO for sure. When you look at the markets today, S&Ps are down, Nasdaq's down. The market's not, the reaction of a lot of stocks just on the opening today is kind of strange. Maybe you wouldn't have thought that this would happen, but, so let's see how the market reacts. And I think your other question was pretty fair. Is this a transformational moment in the market? Is this what we're going to look back at and say, hey, you know what, this was the top of the bull market? I don't know, but it's interesting.
Tom, I've always known you to be the champion of the retail investor. And this is also a big moment for the average investor out there, just given how the stock was allocated on various platforms, Robinhood, you name it. Do you think the retail investor will be left holding the bag?
No, I think the retail investor is too smart. I think if anybody gets left holding the bag, it'll be the institutions that feel like, it'll be a couple things. It'll be institutions that think they have to participate, or it'll be potentially index fund holders over the next couple of weeks if they haven't already, tried to front run this. I think it'll be a lot of, 401ks and a lot of just different passive index funds. I think the individual investors won't touch this from a buying standpoint. And if they were allocated, I think they'll sell out first day. But I think next week when they launch the option markets right away, I think this will be one of the hottest new offerings as far as, trading goes. So I think you're going to see a ton of retail investors. I think this is going to be the thing everybody gravitates to in the next couple of weeks. I think it'll be the most actively traded underlying, both options and stock. We
have a good dose of investor education. I want to put up this graphics, this illustration from the folks over at Rand Group, really showing the life cycle of what normally happens with an IPO. Of course, you can see a lot of the hype there. Stock continues to go up, and then there's a period of down to sideways trading action as the company tries to prove itself via financial reporting, its financial statements, its earnings calls, its investment bank presentations. Keith, you think this will hold true with the likes of a SpaceX?
Yeah, I think it's unique in that, first of all, we've been, seeing how it's been trading in this hyper liquid market beforehand. And, we've never seen a valuation of a $1.7 trillion company, which puts it in the top 10 of all U.S. companies. But I do think that the trend that you see there is you go from excitement initially with an IPO to, measuring the output. So, it makes sense to me that that's been a historical cycle. Again, is that the same cycle this one will have? It's really hard to say. And I also think it matters about the overall market. And listen, I'm not an analyst that covers the stock per se, so we don't have a recommendation. But I would think about this. I mean, for most analysts out there, you do some of the parts valuation. It's tough to get there. So what are you betting on? You're betting on Elon and his vision for the future, which is, it seems like more like a venture capitalism, that it's either going to work or it's not. But again, I think history is a guide, but this one is very unique in how it's coming to market and how long it's been private for.
Keith, simple question, maybe not such a simple answer. A lot of excitement, of course, with this IPO. Why isn't the market come out stronger out of the gate on a day like this?
Sometimes these things are somewhat anticlimactic. And I'd also just say, the market, even though we had a really nice day yesterday, you've had a bit of this kind of corrective move, especially in tech. Off the highs, it was down about 9% off the highs. And then you recently just saw OpenAI discuss maybe cutting prices. So a little bit of a pricing war at the same time. A lot of these companies are spending a lot of money on CapEx. So I think there's just some kind of lingering concerns after you had a 47% increase in tech in a short period of time where expectations have risen. And then also, even though oil prices are down, and the market initially had a good, positive reaction on potentially, coming to the end of this war, the market has already believed that we were coming to the end of this war. That's why oil prices are there. So I just think in general, markets are often 2 steps forward, 1 step back. We've really gone 3 steps forward and a little short step back here. And I just think we're going to have a choppy period here in general. And I think the SpaceX IPO by itself is not enough to change that overall theme. And again, the float coming to the market is somewhat small. What I've seen in the Nasdaq, even when it comes in, it will likely be less than 1%. So it's not enough by itself to move this overall market.
Nancy, would you be as excited as you are on SpaceX for an OpenAI IPO, Anthropic IPO? Now, look, Sam Altman, Dario Amodei, Dario, of course, the CEO of Anthropic. They're not Elon Musk. I mean, that's what I'm trying to hint at here, but they are visionary executives setting the tone for all things AI. Or is this just an Elon Musk-led moment?
Well, no, I don't think it is. I mean, I do think SpaceX is really the only vertically integrated AI company. They have the capital, they've got the data, they have large language models, they got the hardware, the manufacturing, and the engineering talent. But that said, I think you need these other companies. We would be more interested in Anthropic than we would be in OpenAI, but that's today. That could change tomorrow, depending on the arms race in that business. But no, I think there's a lot of interesting companies that are sort of in the wings, and we will. Again, with our thematic portfolio, we're really interested in all of these spaces, no pun intended. So space, robotics, quantum, and nuclear. So we're looking for opportunities. And when these other companies come public, we'll be looking for an opportunity there.
And we're still looking for that SpaceX first trade. You're watching the digital billboard out there in Times Square. Tom, Keith, and Nancy, I appreciate the perspective on this very important day. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, we have much more coverage on SpaceX's IPO. Straight ahead, I'll be joining Julie Hyman in Market Catalyst next.
on Earth or somewhere, and it provides, as I said, inspiration for people throughout the world to say, here's something you can look forward to that is exciting and inspiring, something that makes you glad to be human. Thank you.
All the broken roads. We open the markets, and now let's get ready to start trading. Thank you.
Welcome to Market Catalyst. I'm Julie Hyman. It is SpaceX Day. We're awaiting the start of trading for SpaceX. It is the largest IPO in history, raising $75 billion for a total valuation of $1.77 trillion. So we're going big here. I'm here with Pral Subramanian, who has been covering Tesla and SpaceX for a long time now. Brian Sazzi with me as well. And Brooke DePalma is live at the Nasdaq. The gang's all here. And I'm seeing indications here that we could possibly, we see indications until the thing opens. But right now, it looks like that the indications for open at 175 after the stock priced at 135. Brooke, I'm going to go to you first. How does the vibe compare at the Nasdaq compared to a normal IPO? And I know that Elon is, sort of speaking remotely from Texas, but there are a lot of people there. So what are things like there at the Nasdaq today?
Things are completely different than a typical IPO, Julie. Outside the Nasdaq, ahead of the opening bell, NYPD, the local police department, put up barriers around the window behind where they do the opening bell so that a large crowd that came together in hopes to see Elon Musk, who once again is at the SpaceX headquarters, maybe they can get a little sneak peek, but the crowd was pushed back. I mean, we are talking hundreds of people gathering outside just to hopefully get a glance of some of the SpaceX executives who are going to become millionaires, billionaires, and Elon Musk a trillionaire today. And also, too, photos lasted for about a half hour. And also, too, typically I just walk in with just my one badge, but today I'm required to wear this badge as well that says that I am part of the press. This is a very heightened environment. There is double, if not triple, if not quadruple, the security guards around the Nasdaq today. And there is just lots of excitement, though, at the end of the day. Lots of photos being taken and lots of very happy SpaceX employees.
Yes, most definitely. And lots of happy, sort of VC folks who got in early in SpaceX as well, who are going to be doing well, at least presumably, although they've got some lockups. Brooke, thank you. Guys, we've all been doing this for a minute or two. We've been covering this industry for a while. A hot minute. And it does feel like this is not just a milestone for SpaceX. It feels like sort of this culmination of years of companies staying private for longer, getting larger, for longer in the private market, and, not just being unicorns anymore, but like decacorns. And, it just feels like a different era in the market at this point with SpaceX going public.
I mean, these companies and these executives don't want the scrutiny. They don't want the scrutiny coming on earnings calls. They don't want, just think how the environment has changed compared to when Elon took Tesla public many years ago. Elon was at the Nasdaq for that debut. Different ball game today. He's now at SpaceX. He's not at the Nasdaq supporting with all his crowded, with all the whole crowds of folks. But they just don't want that scrutiny that comes with being a public company. So why not stay private for longer? The private markets have evolved a lot since over the past decade, and they are at a point now where if you can continue to raise rounds at higher valuations, why bother even coming public?
Yeah, that really is a great point here, because if you had asked me 2 years ago, would SpaceX go public, I would say they don't need to. Why bother? They're running, it's a very vision forward enterprise that's probably going to have several years of losses. Why would they need to go public if you can keep raising outside?
That's correct.
It's just such a out there company in that regard. But I think things like Starlink have turned the tide in the sense that this business is growing tremendously, showing profits. Maybe that can help build the case. And then maybe now, Saz, they're saying, we need a lot of money.
Right, that to me is the key difference. The capital intensity that is needed has changed because it's not just rockets, it's building out data centers, it's exploring whether data centers in space are possible. It's those like literal and figurative moonshots, right?
But it's also, you have to bring, the other component here too is bringing liquidity to the employees, because without
and the early investors.
That's correct, because without that, those SpaceX workers, where they're going? OpenAI, Anthropic, and all these other hot AI companies for potentially bigger paychecks.
Blue Origin.
Yeah.
That's right. Even though most of the people we talk to say SpaceX is sort of far and away the leader in this space. You still have competition for employees for that reason. That makes sense here. And we've been having fun, as I've been talking about all day, like sort of surveying people on X where they think the stock is going to go, both on the first day and sort of over the next several months. And there is reportedly enormous retail interest in this thing. So it was reported there could be a 20% to 30% allocation. It seems like, reportedly the allocation is closer to 20%, but that it was many times, we talked about it being oversubscribed, in particular on the part of retail. There were reports that $100 billion in shares had been requested. They're only selling $75 billion, and if 20% is going to retail, there are a lot of disappointed people out there.
There's folks that missed out on
get their allocation.
That missed out on the Tesla story, and they're not going to miss out again. And I think this notion that these retail investors are coming in for a quick flip. Like, you talk to a lot of them like we do. No, that's not the case. They want to own this company for the next 10 years, and they are looking at retiring with $10, $15, $20 million in the bank account because they're betting on Elon.
Yeah, and they didn't have a chance to do that before that for many years, right? It was all insiders and people who wanted to dabble in secondary markets, and now they finally have their chance to get, one share, two shares, three. I don't know what you want to call it. There's the excitement there, kind of palpable. You can kind of feel it. Just like on our X.com. things
Yes,
like
yes,
that.
yes.
And the other thing here too is, you mentioned it a little bit, Praz, too. It's this stock, let's say it opens at 150, 80, whatever it is, it's still on a dollar amount cheaper than some of these Mag 7 stocks, and that's not how you're supposed to value companies.
No, you are not.
You're not supposed to do it. I'm
Come
just
on,
saying.
you know better.
No, but people they say, Brian, I want to buy shares in Nvidia, but the stock price is too high, and I make the
So
value.
buy a fraction of the
that's,
share.
Well, that's what I'm
Come
saying.
on.
But that's not how that we know that.
Right,
but these are the questions
yeah.
I get.
Psychologically, it makes a huge amount of sense.
Yes.
I can buy 10 shares at $1,000, but I don't want to buy one share at $1,000. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like
It does the same thing, but yes, I get your point. Okay, and the disclaimer here is this ain't a sure thing. Let's be clear here. Like,
What, going to Mars is not a sure thing, Julie? Yes,
well,
it is.
But many people do think it's a sure thing. To your point, they think if they get these shares at 135, they're going to retire on that money, right? Now, if they're retiring 5 years from now, maybe they need to think again, because even if it does work ultimately over the long term, his data centers, even if it works to put a data center in space, it's not happening, in the short term.
No.
These are very long-term bets that might never come to fruition.
And Praz could talk about this more than I can, but the bottom line is what the single biggest thing that is going to feed the financial statements of a SpaceX over the next decade is reusable rockets. In order for them to have the ultimate financial success that they're pitching here on the prospectus, they need to be able to send these rockets up in the sky, bring them back in a couple hours, refuel them, and then try to refuel them in air too, and use them, launch these things.
And they're not doing that yet.
And they're not
to be
doing
clear,
that yet.
They're especially not doing it yet with the payload, with the weight.
They need Starship
that
to work
they
out.
need to take.
Yeah, I mean, just sort of some back of the hand math. So Musk was talking about in 5 years, we're going to have 1 million tons. It's doable to have 1 million tons of cargo going up at that point, right?
Like annually or?
Well, annually.
Okay.
Right. So in 5 years.
Gotcha.
And Ed Ludlow, Bloomberg did actually look at the math, and basically what that means is you need to have all these starships going. They haven't even successfully launched that properly, right? But essentially what it means, if you look at over 5 years, it requires 25 launches a week, right? Of Starship, which is like 3 a day or something like that, every day for a year.
And they haven't even gotten there yet with
get
one.
to 1 million tons a year. So that's a massive undertaking. And you talk about reusable rockets. These rockets are reusable for like 10 times. Like they're not like forever reusable. They have to be refurbished and then they're end of life. So it's a big ask to send up a million tons of cargo, which would require to build a constellation of data center constellation. So there's a long way to go, but again, the future is happening now, right? I hate to use that term, but it's sort of, we're seeing that happen, and it could be exponential sort of breakthroughs in batteries and launch technology, et cetera. So,
and the other aspect here too is, we saw Elon there at the Nasdaq or home base for him in Texas, and the amount of time he's spending today on the SpaceX IPO, talking to employees, Nasdaq people, whatever it is, that's time he's not spending at Tesla. I'm not saying he's not thinking about Tesla, but that's the other point here. He's the CEO, CTO, and chairman of SpaceX, and he's also the CEO of Tesla. He's got Neuralink. He's got the Boring Company.
Oh, it's fine because he's going to buy Tesla.
There's hear me on risk here. If Elon today drops dead, like what happens to this web of networks?
Right. And then ownership and everything. And then also, don't forget the amount of time he spends on X, replying to people.
Yeah, it's not like actually typing.
Yeah, Kimball's not going to come in here and run. Kimball Musk is not coming here to run SpaceX.
Yeah.
I mean, Kimball, he can maybe run a restaurant, but he's not here. He's not running SpaceX.
Woo, okay. Guys, hang on for just a minute because we want to bring in one of those early investors that we've been talking about, somebody who already owns SpaceX even before the IPO. That is Justice Parmar. He is CEO of Fortuna Investments. It's a venture capital firm invested in SpaceX. Justice, so I imagine you're pretty happy today, but what do you make of this whole process? The idea that they set it at 135 and that was it, and what are you expecting from the stock today and in the coming weeks?
Sure. Great to see you, Julie, again. A couple things, right? There's a lot of things at play here, right? And so the big X factor is Elon's, army of retail supporters, right? And so largely speaking, they've been obviously boxed out of the stock, right? There's really been no way to play it. My hope or my belief is I'm hoping that a chunk of them were able to participate today via Robinhood, via E-Trade, a lot of those sorts of platforms. I can attest to the offering was very, very oversubscribed through all channels. So I think whatever anybody was trying to get today was significantly reduced, even ourselves included. And so it's a really interesting interesting setup, right? So what I don't want to see is, let's start with that. I don't want to see this thing just totally skyrocket to some, crazy valuation of $3, $4, $5 trillion or something very heavy, and then it's got to really do the price discovery, right? And you've got all the different nuanced things. You've got a long-term, you've got lockup for earlier shareholders. You've got the inclusion of the Nasdaq and then potential other ETFs. So again, there's 100 different kind of moving parts. But what I would love to see is some sort of normal price discovery and stability, and hopefully it can work off of that base moving forward.
Justice, did you guys request more shares on the IPO?
We did request more shares on the IPO.
Did you get them?
That's right. I got a portion of them. We deal with a couple of the banks, so we're kind of going a couple of different avenues, given that there was a lot of banks on the file. But yeah, so we did get an allocation. It wasn't you know how they say, right? You never get enough of what you want. So that was kind of the situation. But regardless, we're extremely happy.
Justice, what do as you look at the business model, which I think, I can't speak for everyone. I was somewhat surprised at the size of the AI business and how much is riding on that business that we learned about in the S1. So as you look at the various businesses, where do you think the biggest opportunity lies, and where is the biggest risk in those businesses?
That's a great question, and it's obviously quite unique given that 3 companies have essentially merged in the last 6 months or so. And so a couple things, right? So the AI business, I hear it both ways. I see it both ways. He gets, I would say he sometimes gets shortchanged on the AI business. And the only reason I say that is there's a lot of comparisons thrown around with, OpenAI, Anthropic. Keep in mind, OpenAI has been around for over a decade, right? Anthropic, 5 years, right? Elon's just getting out of the gate. So there is a certain element of he hasn't had enough time and real velocity of capital to really get the thing off the ground to make a more direct comparison.
Well, but the direct comparison would be with Grok specifically to those.
Sure.
And it's been around as long, as an LLM available to the public, it's been around about the same amount of time, hasn't it?
Yeah, the Grok has been around longer, but there wasn't a real impetus to we're going to make this a sole standalone AI platform similar to those other companies, right? He never took he never took capital on up until maybe 18 months ago. My calendar's not in front of me. Maybe it was 24 months ago, but it wasn't a decade ago, right? So I guess what I'm trying to say is I think you're going to have to give him and that segment of the business long enough time to really kind of see what they can do. And given the track record of Elon and his multiple businesses, this guy's pretty much, batting 1,000%. Maybe this isn't the one that hits, but the odds are definitely in Elon's favor.
We did something fun where we went out and talked to people on the streets of New York City, asked them some questions about SpaceX, and also asked them what questions they had about the IPO. So I want to play one of them for you, Justice, and see what your answer to this question would be. So listen up.
Are any real competitors going to come out? Because they currently have basically no real ones. What is it? Bezos's company, is it even doing that well? They just lost the rocket. So I'm wondering how they're doing in comparison. I would love for there to be some more competition in the market. Even another Starlink.
Yeah, so Justice, obviously that's not talking about the AI business, it's talking about the rocket business, but how do you think about SpaceX versus a Blue Origin or some of the other competitors out there?
Sure, and the other thing is what I don't necessarily love in this current environment, and you guys, Brian and Press, and you guys kind of hit on it earlier, is a lot of these companies, the Blue Origins included, there's no way for 95 to 99% of the investing public to play it because they there's a velvet rope there and the other on one side or another. And unfortunately, retail gets boxed out. So I just want to kind of start with that. And specifically as it pertains to the space industry, and I'm more atypical space than, let's say, AI. And Julie, I'm not sure if you remember, but it was a couple of years ago, I was on your show on Yahoo here. It was goodbye or goodbye, like see you later.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
And my number one recommendation 2 years ago at the lean price of $4 or $5 a share was Rocket Labs. Today that stock is 120, 130 bucks. And so I loved, and I still love Rocket Labs, shareholder of Rocket Labs. And so there's not that many pure space ways to play the industry, with the exception of Rocket Labs. You've got a few other companies, but it's a very shallow market at the point. And my hope as an investor is that there's an emergence of more names that actually hit the market in the space and aerospace and kind of even defense industries. And so that's my hope for the future. And I hope, for whatever it's worth, they don't all get floated at $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 trillion. I'm hoping that there is a little bit more of an avenue back to the Renaissance days of Amazon going out at $400 million. I'm going to stop for a second, but $400 million. I mean, that's effectively a penny stock, right? And so I'm hoping that some of these companies do come out a little bit earlier and they don't become fully matured and the CEOs are scared of earnings and things like that. But I would love a little bit more deeper, more public company way of the future, if at all possible.
And a lot of these space stocks, by the way, the publicly traded ones, are actually pulling back today. We've seen a lot of enthusiasm in that space recently, but you can see here some of the declines that we're seeing in these stocks, which is interesting. Justice, I want to play for you the other question that was probably the most asked question that we got when we were talking to people on the street of New York City. So here's another one coming your way.
I'd love to know some timelines. Am I going to see this Mars colonization in my lifetime?
How long does it take to make a spaceship that safely goes to other planets?
I mean, I would ask them just how feasible his predictions are of going to Mars soon. I mean, I think it's really ambitious. I do think that's the next step, but I'm really curious, like, is that really possible? I mean, he's given some tight deadlines. I don't know if it's actually going to happen.
So, Justice, what do you think? Is the Mars thing actually happening in our lifetimes?
So I'll break it down this way. I'll double clip on it this way. So I like the way you framed that question is it possible or not? I'm very reluctant to give a timeline. I would more focus on, like, can we even do this thing? And so the one step that was, I guess, maybe forgotten in some of that commentary is Mars is essentially step 2 or 3. The first actual step is the moon. So all eyes are going to be on the moon. A lot of this funding is going to go towards the moon. And so let's nail the moon. Let's do a good job of the moon. He wants to get manufacturing and all sorts of things into the moon and the lunar economy. So I think that's the better barometer of how we'll be able to play that and assess things. And so look, obviously if he does a great job, maybe it takes longer than we expect, but if there is a colony on the moon, there's manufacturing on the moon, I think then that next step of Mars is possible. If you were to put a gun to my head, I unequivocally think that within my lifetime, I'm 43 years old, I think there will be activities on Mars in my lifetime, which will be incredible. What that looks like, I don't exactly know, but that is the goal, and that is why Elon's building these mega companies to fund his endeavor to get to Mars, to move civilization to Mars.
Justice, good to see you. It's Brian here. Question for you. Look, we're all human. If Elon slips on a banana peel, something happens to him, who runs SpaceX, and how much, in your estimation, how much Musk's premium is priced in here at SpaceX?
Yeah, and that's a brilliant question, Brian. Great to see you. I mean, and that's just it. Everyone, worries about certain things about the company. Usually, it's about valuation and numbers and stock price and all that sort of collateral. The real problem is the key man insurance, right? If for whatever reason he's not able to run that company anymore, that's a totally different company. That said, he's got such a moat around all of his businesses. I would like it, I'd make it akin to maybe a Steve Jobs or something like that, where the visionary founder is no longer there, but the company is so big, so robust, it's able to move on. But maybe that hard line of innovation and true founder feel of the company wouldn't be there anymore. Still going to be one of the most valuable companies in the world, as is Tesla, et cetera, because they're so far ahead of everything, but the genesis of the company, of the innovation will probably no longer be there. So that's just an interesting kind of side thought for whatever it's worth. From the SpaceX perspective, Gwen is a tremendous president. She's been there for over 20 years. She, I don't want to say she is the business, but she's a very, very integral, not figurehead aspect of the business. She's day to day. She's running the show. And so I think the company's in great hands.
Justice, awesome to get some time with you this morning. Obviously, it's an exciting day. Thank you so much.
Great to see you. Thanks, Julie.
So we are waiting for SpaceX shares to open. The latest indication that we saw was around 175, but we could have an opening be imminent. We are going to obviously be watching it very, very closely. We'll be right back. Let's go back to the Nasdaq now for a live update from our senior reporter, Brooke DePalma, as we wait for SpaceX to start trading. Brooke, one of the themes that we've been talking about that's unusual about this IPO, among many, is the allocation for retail investors. That reportedly there was going to be 20 to 30% going to retail. And we know a lot of people asked for those shares, more than they could satisfy, right?
That's correct, Julie. I mean, this was unique in the fact that reportedly there was 30% of retail investor allocation. So AKA everyday investors can head to Robinhood or E-Trade or so on, Fidelity to, seek out a stake, a share within this company. But because of the demand that I'm hearing, not just from reported, but also from sources myself, that there just has been such a volume of demand that now retail allocation is coming in slightly lower, more towards 20%. Keep in mind, typically IPOs only have about 5 to 10% of retail allocation. And so that 30% to begin with was quite high. Now we're seeing it's expected to be around 20%. But over the past few days, we've been seeing this sell-off, and Vanda Research coming out with a note this morning, largely saying that potentially could be retail investors moving out of their positions in order to get in on this historic IPO, Julie.
And one of the other unusual things about the IPO is how quickly the sort of juggernaut of the financial industry is introducing new products linked to it, right? So you have already single stock ETFs that are supposed to start trading today, leveraged single stock ETFs that are supposed to start trading today. It'll go into, as we've been talking about, various indices that are tracked by Nasdaq and Russell indexes, where it's going to be added soon. So all of this could add to potential volatility, buying pressure, selling pressure, what have you, in the days after it starts trading.
Right, and also too, you have to keep in mind that because this IPO is one of the first, or if not the first, to get fast-tracked into those major indices, this could also have implications for any retirement accounts that are tied to the Nasdaq 100 or the S&P 500. So if you do see volatility because of SpaceX in the coming days, Americans could look at their retirement account and also see that reflected within it. So definitely keep a lookout on that and don't get too spooked with the volatility to come. But so many of my sources that I have spoke with over the past few days, largely what we know right now in this moment is that book is being built, that there is buying and selling and lots of negotiating happening on the second floor here at the Nasdaq in order to get to that IPO debut price, which seems like could be coming in the matter of moments or hours. And it seems like over time, because of the high demand, Julie, that this IPO has, it could take longer to make that official first trade. But at the same time, it seems like the excitement is there to get this company out there and begin trading.
Right. And just a reminder, the last indication that was reported on was for around 174, 175. So we'll see where that ends up going here. But to your point, you have the market makers kind of negotiating, figuring out how many buyers and sellers you have on both sides, at what price they are willing to buy and sell, and then where that stock is going to open as a result. I'm really curious also, Brooke, not just where it's going to open today, but where it's going to close today, what the trajectory of the day is going to look like.
Right, and keep in mind that this was a company that, typically you have that range and then you have the indication the night before. But from the get-go within the filing, this company was set to debut or, indicated to open at 135. And so now with this 175 indication, that would be about a 29% premium to that 135 IPO price. And it seems like they're not necessarily going to open until they have it exactly right. Of course, the Nasdaq does this hundreds of times. In fact, just this year, there already have been 38 IPOs. But just to understand the gravity of this particular IPO, they're looking to raise $75 billion. And of those 38 IPOs, Julie, that have come to market so far this year, they all together have raised $23 billion. And so this, a much different story, Julie, than maybe other IPOs we've seen come to market. This valuation reaching $1.8 trillion. I mean, it's truly a remarkable day here at the Nasdaq. And you could tell that there's such an excitement from not only the SpaceX team, but also the Nasdaq team. There are dozens, hundreds of people working on this particular IPO, as there is with others. But this one, I really think that they're putting, of course, a very close look to.
Yeah, I mean, and they're still going to be battling it out for the OpenAI and Anthropic IPOs that are coming at some point as well. Brooke, Thank you so much. We'll be checking back in, of course. Coming up next, we're going to dig into SpaceX's plans to tackle the AI compute crunch in space. We're going to talk about the power equation next. One of SpaceX's biggest ambitions is to bring the AI data center build-out to space. In its S-1 filing, Elon Musk's company laid out plans to compete in the AI compute market and noted it can offer continuous solar power and a path around Earth-bound energy constraints. Joining us for more is James West, an expert in earthbound energy constraints, Milius Research Head of Energy and Power Research. James, it's good to see you on this SpaceX day.
You too, Julie.
I do want to talk about power on Earth, but let's begin with power above Earth.
Sure.
We know that this is not happening yet. We don't know when it's happening. We don't know if it's happening. But is there not enough power on Earth? I mean, we know there are constraints, but is the answer to send satellites into space, data centers into space?
I think over time, certainly space becomes a market for power. You do have 24/7 solar power in space. We use that already for the space programs, for the satellite programs. And so it's a known quantity and a known entity. And we only use probably less than 1% of the sun's solar power on Earth. And so we could use a lot more when we're in space. But really the biggest constraint, as you know, to data centers and AI on Earth is power.
It is. I mean, but at the same time, I guess, how serious and severe do you think the constraints are terrestrially right now?
So I think the constraints are very serious. I think every single hyperscaler will tell you that their biggest number one constraint today is power. And so the speed to power is an issue. The ability to get power is an issue. AI models are being held up by the lack of power on Earth. We have a grid that was built, particularly in the U.S., which is a miracle of the modern economy, but the grid was built for slow, incremental additions of power, not this surge in power that we're seeing right now.
And so, in your view, how adequately is it being addressed? How urgently is it being addressed? Is it?
So what you're seeing right now is the private market is going around kind of the traditional monopoly utilities. So the independent power producers and other entities like KKR. You saw an announcement yesterday of a new company they started called Helix, which is going to provide data centers and power. They're going to put co-located power in place. So think about natural gas-fired power, think about solar and storage power, whatever it takes to get this done. SMRs as well are part of that, and they did that with Vistra Energy. And so there's going to be this private market push, but I also think there should be a push within the regulated utilities to cause further deregulation, something that started really in the 70s and got encouraged in the 90s and the early 2000s and led to the IPPs. We need more IPPs. These are the best companies to attack this. They're the fastest movers. They're the ones that can most aggressively address the power consumption needs. But then the whole supply chain's got to surge and lever up and be able to supply the turbines, the transmissions, the switch gears, everything else.
And what are the implications for residential rates then, if we see further deregulation?
Right. So I think right now what we're seeing is a parallel market being created for large load centers. I think data centers and advanced manufacturing and the retail market trying to be protected. None of the data center or hyperscalers want to impact the retail market, the households. They do not want to see power surges, power price increases there. They want to make sure that the new generation that's built, which is going to be at a much higher price point, is paid for by the data centers and the hyperscalers and not impacting ratepayers.
We know that the sort of power picture across the U.S. has become more dependent on things like solar and natural gas. Wind is being taken out of the equation more and more often because President Trump doesn't like it. Is that going to be a problem going forward if we're trying to really ramp up?
Well, we just started the largest wind farm in the United States this month, so it's not like wind has stopped. Now, new permitting has certainly slowed. This administration is not really behind the wind market, and there's some issues around national security and wind that the Department of War has brought up. But I think that overall, solar plus storage, as long as storage we can get to long duration storage, is adequate. Natural gas is very reliable. It's abundant here in the U.S. 75% of what's being built today on new generation and has permits is natural gas. And we have a ton of natural gas in this country and in lots of pockets around the world too, but especially in this country to be able to provide that power.
James, a lot of these hyperscalers are making these sort of behind-the-meter agreements with those independent power producers. There are some jurisdictions that are trying to mandate that, right, as a condition of hooking up here. Do you think the market's going to kind of take care of it and that is going to be the standard for these types of arrangements?
What we're seeing right now is FERC, with the regulatory capabilities on the various markets, is telling them that you need to have a way to build data centers at the same time as you build behind the meter power, because your grid connection may not come for 5 to 7 years. So let them build that power, connect it at some point when you can. Hopefully, then you can sell power back and forth to the grid and create more stability for the grid. But for right now, because the interconnection queues are so long, behind the meter is absolutely the right solution.
James, the power companies had a really, they had a rip, and then many of them, and collectively, have kind of stalled out. Like if I look at the S&P Utilities Index this year, it's up 3.5%, so it's underperforming the market. Some of the big guys that are really leveraged to this, like a Constellation, it's down 29% this year. What's going on there? Because I know you still like a lot of these stocks.
We like really all those stocks. I think it's regulatory uncertainty. PJM had to come in via FERC. forcing them to do a market intervention. They're going to have a backstop auction probably this September, which is not a market-based function. So they're actually coming in and changing the nature of the game for at least one auction process. And so we need to see how that plays out or how that's going to be formed. We know what the commentary has been, what the companies have said. We've seen the initial what FERC has been out with, but we need the final version that JPM has been out with, BJM has been out with. PJM needs to come out with the final filing to FERC, and then FERC has to sign off. And then ERCOT, you had an intervention as well by the Texas regulator saying we're going to go to batches instead of one by one. So I think it's more the regulatory uncertainty around this that has kept these stocks at bay, whereas we're continuing to see, the acceleration in demand growth for chips, memory, et cetera, that are going into AI. Well, you can't do any of that stuff without the list of companies you just put up on screen.
So what do you think is going to be the unlock then? Is it sort of the resolution of some of these regulatory issues?
I think it is, and the resolution is imminent. We're talking the next few weeks in the auction in PJM is going to be in September, but we think we can have bilateral transactions that occur well before that. And I think you started to see the first of that with the KKR announcement yesterday with their partners NVIDIA and Vistra, and I think you'll see more of that. But there's been no slowdown in negotiations between the IPPs and the hyperscalers. Those have continued. They're running scenario analysis right now. They just want to see kind of the final regulatory framework before they sign on the dotted line. But we're 99% of the way there. I don't mean that as like the Iran deal, we're not 99% of the way there. I mean, we're actually 99% of the way there.
In reality, in the real world.
Yes.
Just finally, James, I'm curious, we've seen this big backlash in various municipalities around the country against these big projects. Is that a material risk, do you think? Has it really? Because it has seemed to slow it down.
It is a risk. It could slow things down. I mean, I think the data center hyperscalers are looking at their real estate shopping. I mean, Texas has said, hey, don't make it noisy. Certain markets at BGM have said, let's pause on this. But I think overall, the momentum is still very strong. So certain counties, and when you go into the counties and you talk to the people, you show them the tax benefits, you show them the job creation, generally speaking, these things start to move forward. So I think it's a near-term kind of concern. I think the AI companies, quite frankly, have not done a good job of explaining AI, coming out and saying we're taking half your jobs. Nobody wants to hear that. So look, I think as that kind of proves itself not to be actually accurate, that AI actually creates more jobs than it takes away. I think people get more comfortable with data centers. They get more comfortable with the water usage. It's all closed loop at this point now. So you're not contaminating the water. You're not browning the water like, you have AOC of Congress showing bottles of water with brown liquid in there. That's not actually what's happening on the ground at the data centers.
James, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Julie. Good to talk.
We continue to await the first trade after SpaceX sold shares to the public at $135 apiece. Now, Bloomberg is reporting that the latest indication is for the shares to open at $168.75. That number's been moving lower a little bit, but they're still jockeying, they're still positioning, they're still negotiating. And of course, we will keep you posted on that first trade. We'll be right back. SpaceX is set to start trading in the largest public listing in history. Brooke DePalma still with us from down on the Nasdaq, and Brian Sazzi, our executive editor, here with me at the desk as we await that first trade. The latest indications that I've seen, 168.75, so lower than our poll would have indicated, lower than I guessed.
Well, you said it right, Julie. It's all about the close. It's all about the close.
I guess it's all about the close. It's all about the also like how the stock is going to do in the coming days. Brooke, you know, it's interesting to see this thing not go sky high in the indications.
It certainly is, Julie.
I didn't mean to do that pun. I didn't mean to do the pun. Sorry. Sky high. Sorry.
Sky high, rocket, out of this world. I mean, we could use all the puns today, Julie. It's okay. It's okay. I think that what we're hearing from my sources from here, the excitement definitely is there. And I think that because of the fact that this has seen such high demand, as I was saying before, that it kind of is waiting and seeing where exactly this all plays out. But of course, we're still above where exactly it was set to debut at that $135 mark. So anywhere above that would still be a premium to what we had previously expected, Julie.
And Saz, you and I were talking this morning as well, not just about SpaceX for itself, but like what it means for the ecosystem of Wall Street. So that means, what does it mean for Nasdaq? The fact that it won this IPO, what are the implications for the other big IPOs coming? What does it mean for all these brokers through which, you know, retail traders and, you know, requested stuff, right?
Feasting.
All the underwriters, like everybody on Wall Street. Like, how many people have we talked to the past couple of weeks who we've asked about SpaceX and they said, well, I'm constrained from what I can say because my firm was involved in the IPO.
A whole lot of them.
Everybody. Yeah. So it's just interesting, that big halo effect.
Keep in mind, Nasdaq is a public company.
Sure.
And now would be a good time, I think, to go back and start crunching the numbers on potential valuations for Nasdaq, because this is what you're seeing today. A SpaceX IPO, world's largest in history, that is looks likely it's going to go off pretty darn well without a hitch. Visually,
don't jinx.
No, I know, but like visually, but also visually pleasing at the Nasdaq at Times Square. Also looks to be a job well done at SpaceX HQ. Nasdaq does IPOs very well, and if I'm Sam Altman, if I'm Dario Amodei over at Anthropic, I see this going off very well. I'm calling up the Nasdaq people and seeing what I can do with Nasdaq to bring their companies to market. Nasdaq is down. Now, I'm not saying New York Stock Exchange doesn't know what it's doing. It's a New York Stock Exchange, but I think this is a very, very big win for Nasdaq. And from an investment standpoint, I'm going back to the annual report on Nasdaq and understanding how they have transformed their business.
Well, and just to be clear here, and this is something I've said many times, for both NYSE, which is owned by ICE, and Nasdaq, this is a minority. This is not a huge part of their business, the listings business. But in terms of, again, that halo effect, that reputational boost that it gets, it is very significant. And Brooke, you were talking about just how pumped all the Nasdaq people are that they have this event happening there.
Exactly, Julie. And also keep in mind about where exactly the Nasdaq sits. I mean, we are at the corner of Times Square. We're at 43rd and Broadway. And between this, the World Cup, the Knicks, I mean, the excitement in New York has already been buzzing. And now you bring in this, and it garnered a crowd of hundreds of people. So even just the seat and where it sits right in the middle and really the heart of New York City, it definitely speaks volumes to just physical location of where it is. And also just, like I said earlier today, the amount of security, the amount of coordination that this has taken today. Even SpaceX, you know, ringing the bell at both their headquarters in Texas and here, they definitely have put on a show. And even when you think about where exactly, you know, the bankers right now trying to understand where exactly this is going to open, there's currently an entire show happening upstairs as that person who ultimately will hit the first trade button sort of works with bankers. And like we said before, works with bankers to buy and sell and get to that IPO, that first trade price. And so the show happening right now at Nasdaq, like Brian said, people are watching.
And small nuance here, I think it's important, like context. One, this is the second Elon Musk company that Nasdaq has brought public. Obviously, of course, the first one there is Tesla. Also, too, Brooke, you and I reported this 2 months ago. You know, Nasdaq also won Walmart. Walmart moved from the New York Stock Exchange over to Nasdaq, which really sent a statement, I think, to a lot of other companies.
And just to add on that, to date, 500 plus companies have switched from the New York Stock Exchange to the Nasdaq across 12 sectors. And so that is pretty significant. It's like the Nasdaq continues to build on this momentum that they are the heart, the tech focused exchange where these companies should be going. And we know Walmart has been trying to be more, what's their phrase? Tech powered or human powered, tech focused. And so these are companies that see that NASDAQ as something like that. Whereas when I go to the New York Stock Exchange to cover IPOs down there, which is also exciting and lots of momentum, it does tend to be more consumer facing companies like a diner or a restaurant or a CPG brand.
Yeah, that is an interesting distinction here. And as we know, NASDAQ also changed its rules for SpaceX to be included in its various indices, which is not insignificant.
Pays to be Elon.
The indications, by the way, for the stock are still falling. 165 is the latest that I'm seeing reported by Bloomberg. Very interesting.
Wasn't it 175?
Yes.
Yeah.
So very interesting. We're going to keep monitoring that.
Julie,
obviously, yeah.
Julie, keep in mind, I mean, anything above 135, though, still makes Elon Musk a trillionaire. And that's what everyone's been talking about, him becoming the world's first trillionaire. As long as it stays above 135.
Everything's coming up Elon, no matter what, I guess.
Did he sign the giving pledge?
Exactly.
Yeah, right. All right.
The non-giving pledge. The non-giving pledge.
The keep it all pledge. Yes. Keep pounding those Celsius, Brian. All right. Brooke, we're going to be back with you. Sal's going to be back with me. Coming up, we're going to talk about the IPO and its effect on retirement funds. Important topic there. We'll be right back. All eyes are on SpaceX as Wall Street beats the drum for the largest public listing of all time. SpaceX's IPO will also have impacts on retirement incomes as exposure to the company ripples into retirement funds. My next guest calls SpaceX's IPO a Vegas money for retirement clients. Joining me now, Teresa Arago, financial advisor at Gen Wealth Financial for this week's FA Corner, brought to you by Capital Group. There is a lot of excitement. There's a lot of hype. There's a lot of talk, Teresa. What are you telling your clients? Because I'm sure some of them want to get in on this.
Yes, I've actually had a lot of conversations with clients. What's been interesting is I've had conversations with clients who historically are very conservative or ask me to help them stay very conservative, and they've been reaching out too. And my stance with my clients is always to educate them about how an IPO works, how it works when it gets on the secondary market, and then make a decision based on their plan, whether it makes any sense or not. But there has been a lot of buzz among everybody across the age bands.
And so, when you think about your client's sort of horizon, right, on investment, whether they are in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, closer to retirement, how do you think about then something like an IPO and whether they want to take on that risk?
Specifically here, I work with LPL Financial. We do not participate in IPOs in general. So I'm never really going to be in the position to encourage them to participate or not. But I do want them to understand how it works, because some of them will reach out. And specifically with SpaceX, there were a lot of shares allocated to retail investors, which is abnormal. But one of the most important things that I had to talk to them about was being an accredited investor. An IPO has a lot of risk to it. The company could be great. The company could not do so great on the market. They've not been battle tested on the market. So if they're not accredited and meeting those requirements, then it's an immediate, hey, pause. I can't tell you not to do that with your own money, but I definitely want you to consider the limitations that you may have there. But when it comes to retirement, that is a totally different conversation. There is a place for stock in your retirement. Taking part in an IPO would be very tricky, in my opinion, in being part of your retirement plan as a holding.
I mean, of course, some of these folks are going to end up owning it, whether they choose it specifically or not. And that's because, as we know, Russell and Nasdaq have changed their rules to allow SpaceX to enter their various benchmarks much quicker, sort of a fast track.
Yes.
And so how do you think about that? And are you steering clients to the S&P indices because they won't have SpaceX as early?
I think for my clients, what we've talked about when it comes to SpaceX and really any newer stocks that come onto the market is to let it breathe for a minute. It's sort of like when Taylor Swift was on her tour, right? The tickets were just exponentially higher than they normally would have been for a concert. And that tends to happen when you have one of these where there's this excitement. The institutions that are participating in that IPO, they're buying based on data, but the retail investors are usually buying based on excitement or emotion. And when it comes to your retirement, it's about analytics, not emotion. So I know it's going to be part of our conversation at some point, but initially, for a lot of people, it may not be the best fit. They need to talk to their financial advisor and make sure that in the scope of their entire plan, that this makes sense regardless of whether it's the new shiny thing or not.
Do you think that Nasdaq and Russell made the wrong choice in deciding to include it more quickly?
Not at all. I think that, they have a lot more data than most of us do. And so they made that decision assuming that it would be good for their process. So I don't have an issue with them including it there, but I just want to make sure the individual investor understands the overall scope of that instead of making that decision quickly. We're big fans of not making emotional decisions when it comes to your retirement, especially in general. So we're always going to say, let's make sure we understand the data and that it makes sense in the bigger picture.
Teresa, thank you so much. Appreciate it. That was FA Corner, brought to you by Capital Group. Well, we are still waiting for those SpaceX shares to open up. At last check, the indications, again, as reported by Bloomberg, 165 could be the first trade of SpaceX after it sold shares to the public at $135 a piece. We'll be watching it very closely, and we will come back to you when those shares do start trading. So keep it right here on Yahoo Finance.